When you look at your knees and you think about everything they've gone through, what do they represent today in this moment?
A lot of scars, a lot of hardware built in there. I don't know if I quite trigger the X-ray machine at the airport, but I get dang close. But to me, I got a lot of aches and pains. To be honest with you, for a 35-year-old with the aches and pains in my knees, it's probably not normal. But that's something that I'm gonna have to be smart about for the rest of my life and find a way to manage, which I will. But they are actually a great reminder when I wake up in the morning. Most mornings I do have some type of pain in both of my knees, just like early onset arthritis. And most people would look at that in a negative fashion, but I actually look at it in a positive fashion because it's a reminder of my journey and a reminder of some of the struggles that I've been through. And I know that my story, some of the journey and struggle that I've been through, has actually been inspiring to others because they've let me know that. So I carry that with me as a point of pride as my knees continue to do whatever they're going to do, and I try to take care of them. I guess I always have that lasting reminder that, hey, this is just part of your journey, part of your story. That story's not over either, and it has inspired others in the past, and hopefully it can continue to inspire others in the future. One of the things that, just to kind of carry on with that point, that's great is most people around here and most people that I kind of relate with, they're aware of the injury history. And, knee injuries are fairly common, especially amongst young athletes, male, female, and especially in high school. And a lot of times when they're dealing with those types of impactful injuries at that level, at that young age, they don't necessarily have someone that relates to them because maybe their mom or dad hasn't been through the same situation. So I've actually been able to connect with a number of young athletes, high school age athletes for the most part, that are, they did tear an ACL or they do have a medial meniscus tear. And I'm able to just relate to them and kind of give them a reference point of, hey, like, I've been in the same situation as you. Here are the things that I did that worked for me. And it's less about the physical rehab protocol. It's more about the mentality. And I think I've been able to have a positive impact in those situations. And even though it's just, one-to-one type of personal stuff, it's not necessarily a scalable thing that I can provide. It's still meaningful to me that I can have an impact on those young athletes and hopefully just be one positive glimmer in their athletic career that helps them push through and get to the next step.
The Portland Tribune called you the heart and soul of the 2010 team that advanced to the national championship game, ultimately losing to Cam Newton and the Auburn Tigers. Even though you were injured, how would you best describe being in that environment with your team?
That's a tough question. I know that statement by that news outlet is probably a strong statement. I don't necessarily agree with it. Less more individual minded, more about team. And I think that when I look at that 2010 team, to this day, it's the best team that I've ever been a part of. And the best part for me is if you look at the individuals that were on that team, I think we had one player that year drafted in that draft class, and that was Casey Matthews. I want to say he was a fourth or fifth round pick as a linebacker. Obviously, there were some younger players in that team that ended up being NFL athletes, but we didn't have a lot of amazing NFL talent that was draftable NFL talent in the junior and senior classes that season. But we were one of the best teams in the country. When it all was all said and done, I think we were finished as number two because obviously we lost to Auburn in that national championship. But 12-1, obviously a Pac-10 championship, an undefeated regular season, things that haven't been accomplished at this university before and still haven't been accomplished to this day. And that's why that team was recently inducted into the University of Oregon Athletics Hall of Fame. So that was a pretty cool honor, but just an amazing team full of individuals that that cared deeply about the culture. We had been through a lot. There were a lot of ups and downs. There was coaching changes. There was some issues off the field with a number of different teammates, some of which were still on that team and some of which had been removed from the team. But no matter what, we pressed forward. We worked hard. We got better. I think the summer leading into that season was probably the hardest working, just fastest moving summer I've ever been a part of, as far as getting our conditioning right, getting our strength right, but also just building a cohesive unit of leadership. Had a number of leadership council meetings, just trying to point the direction of the team in the right way. We didn't know at the time, but obviously it all worked out really well. So tremendous honor, one of the biggest honors of my life, just to be attached to that team. And anytime that I see my teammates, whether it be offensive linemen that I work directly with, or whether it be defensive backs who I competed against every day in practice, it's nothing but love between us. And it's because you've spilled the same blood in the same mud, as they say in the military. And that's a bond and a connection that we'll have for the rest of our lives. And even though we're old and we can't do it anymore physically, um, still great to see those guys.
That was your last collegiate football game, the BCS national title game against Auburn. In that moment, were you able to kind of soak in that this is it? Or like what was that transition period, walking away from a game that gave so much to you and that you gave so much back to that game, overcoming so much adversity, and then it's over and it's time to move on?
Probably one of the biggest challenge of my life, and probably something I still deal with mentally to this day. I think that because football is such a big part of your life for so long, and not just the game, but actually playing the game, being out there, working hard with your brothers, trying to accomplish a goal. It's not necessarily something that I've ever been able to replicate in life, outside of actually playing the game, and I've coached the game at a high level. And even then, you just can't replicate it. It's just not the same. So having to leave that brotherhood and leave that daily struggle, I think it's hard for people to understand unless they've actually done it themselves. But it was very challenging at the time. One day you've got a tremendous amount of structure in your life. You need to be here for meetings, you need to be here for practice, here for training table, here for meetings again. Your whole life and schedule is lined out, including your academics. And then, the day after that, that structure's gone, and you can see it go a number of different ways. You can go the path of, I'm just going to let my hair down, obviously a figure of speech for me, and I'm going to just do whatever I want to do. And I had a number of teammates that took that approach, where you can say, hey, I'm going to take the structure that I had as a lesson, I'm going to build my own structure, and I'm going to allow that to kind of guide me through the rest of this journey that we call life. I took the latter approach as opposed to the former approach, and I think it's benefited me well. But leaving the game as a player is very, very hard. And to this day, whenever I have conversations with, former teammates, kids, or if I have conversations with players that are currently involved in the game at the different schools that I've coached, and, they're thinking about stepping away, as long as it's not health related, I always ask them to reconsider. I say to them, like, hey, I wake up every day wishing that I could still play this game at a high level. I definitely can't, but you can. And I think that if you do step away and it's not health related, you'll regret that later in life. And I really mean that when I explain that to them. And I want everyone to have their own journey and make their own decisions. But the game is highly impactful, not just because of what happens on the field, but mainly because of what happens off the field. And I do, to this day, I do miss it.
Do you ever have vivid dreams about it, Nate? Like you're out there and you're under center and you drop back and you're throwing a pass to Jeff Mail.
Yeah, it's sad to say because it's kind of like it makes me sound like Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite. But I'm not afraid to admit it. I mean, the game had such a big impact on me that I do actually from time to time still kind of have those visions. And I'm usually not throwing the ball to Jeff. I'm usually throwing the ball to my guy Drew Davis, because him and I are brothers for life. Not saying that Jeff and I aren't close, but usually I'm looking for Drew Davis or sometimes David Paulson, because he was the tight end on those teams, and you could always rely on David to get open, especially on third down. But yeah, I definitely do still have those dreams from time to time.
When you wake up from those, like, is there a sense of sadness, gratitude, maybe a little bit of both?
I just smile. I'm gracious. I usually keep it to myself. I usually don't tell my wife that that's kind of what's going on, but I think she kind of understands. I'm just very grateful for the opportunities that I've had in my life and continue to have because of the University of Oregon, because of Oregon football, because of the game of football, and then most importantly, the relationships. I mentioned a few of my teammates by name, but I could go on. It's a laundry list of them. Jordan Holmes, Bo Thran, C.E. Kaiser, and I could go down the line. Michael James, Kenyon Barner. It's literally, just a laundry list of guys that to this day, if I picked up my phone and I called them and I told them, hey, I need you for something, they would say, okay, where and when. They probably wouldn't even ask me what's going on. They would just say where and when. And I don't think a lot of people nowadays have those types of relationships because our world is changing and our world is somewhat unique. So I am very grateful for every one of those relationships because I have a lot of them and they're strong.
It's a beautiful thing, man. I think that's one of the really, really cool parts about playing team sports and having that bond with your teammates is your brother's on the field, and then when it ends and everyone kind of goes their separate ways and you move on, to still have those relationships, or to pick up the phone, if you need something, they'll drop anything to come help you. I mean, I think at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, man.
It is. And I think, our country's in a unique situation and our world's in a unique situation nowadays. And obviously mental health is a big deal. And I think part of the reason why mental health has probably become more prominent is because people are more open to talking about it. It's always been there, but people want to talk about it more. And I think that's great to get it out into the light. I think that's awesome. But I also think part of the reason why mental health may be more of a recurring issue in our country now is because people lack that social connection. They lack a support structure system. And that's why I think I'm so fortunate to have a strong support structure and to have strong social connections. And they just happen to be born out of the game of football and have continued throughout my life. And I think that's very unique. And it's not something that just happens magically. Obviously you have to go through trials and tribulations with those people and link arms with them. And those bonds get built very strong and they stay with you for a long time. So I'm just fortunate and very lucky.